We had discussed different RAID techniques, which included striping of the data, mirroring, as well as parity technique. Now in this video we'll be discussing the different RAID levels. Okay, so this particular slide shows us the different RAID levels that can be implemented. So there is something called as RAID 0, the first level of RAID, where we have striped array with no fault tolerance. So in RAID 0, what we can do is we can store data in multiple hard disk drive, thereby improving the performance of the entire system, but it offers no fault tolerance. Then we have RAID 1, the next level called as RAID 1, which uses the mirroring technique, the disk mirroring technique. Then we have an interesting type of RAID level called as nested RAID. In fact, there are two levels in this nested RAID, RAID 1.0 and RAID 0.1, depending upon whether striping is implemented first or mirroring is implemented first. So RAID 0, RAID 1, nested RAID. Then you have RAID 3. So RAID 3 offers parallel access array with a dedicated parity disk. We are having a separate disk for storing the parity values, and data can be accessed parallelly across an array of physical disks. Then you have RAID 4. So striped array with independent disks and dedicated parity. Here individual disks can be accessed independently. That is the speciality of RAID 4. Then we have the RAID 5. So RAID 5 uses striped array with independent disks and distributed parity. Observe the difference here. Here we are using the term called as distributed parity. What this means is we are not going to maintain a separate dedicated disk as a parity disk. Here in dedicated parity we need to have a separate disk for storing the parity values, whereas in RAID 5, which uses distributed parity, in distributed parity we don't have to maintain a separate hard disk drive. The parity will be distributed across all the other hard disks. RAID 6 is the last level that we'll be discussing. So in RAID 6 we have striped array with independent disks and dual distributed parity. We are going to compute two types of parity and we are going to distribute it. Again, we don't have a dedicated parity disk here. So these are the different RAID levels that we'll be discussing. We start with RAID 0, we move on to RAID 1, then nested RAID, which in turn has two types, RAID 1.0 and RAID 0.1. Then we have RAID 3, RAID 4, RAID 5 and RAID 6. Let us start with what is this RAID 0. Let us try to understand it. So in RAID 0, data is distributed across the hard disk drives in the RAID set. Okay, so data is distributed or split across the hard disk drives. It allows multiple data to be read or written simultaneously and therefore improves the performance. The main aim of RAID 0 is to improve the performance of the storage systems. It allows multiple data to be read or written simultaneously from multiple hard disk drives, and therefore it improves the system performance or the storage system performance. But the drawback here is it does not provide data protection and availability in the event of disk failure. So if one of the hard disk fails, so it doesn't provide the data protection for the data that was stored in that particular disk. It doesn't provide any data protection nor the availability. There is a chance of data becoming unavailable in the event of disk failures in the case of RAID 0. Now let us look at an animation for better understanding of this RAID 0. Host sends some data to be read or written to the storage system. The RAID controller here splits the data or stripes that data and stores it across multiple hard disk drives. Again, a host sends some data to be written or stored in the storage system. The RAID controller stripes this data and stores it in multiple hard disk drives. Now the next RAID level that we have is RAID 1. In RAID 1, the data is stored on two different hard disk drives, yielding two copies of the same data. As we had discussed previously in the previous video, we had discussed something called as mirroring technique. This RAID 1 uses the mirroring technique. Okay, so it yields a two copy of the same data. One data is created, stored, and its mirror data is also stored at the same time. It offers the highest availability. It provides the availability. If one of the hard disk drive fails, data will be accessible to the mirrored copy of that particular hard disk drive or the mirrored disk. In the event of the hard disk drive failure, access to the data is still available from the surviving hard disk drive. That is a major advantage. Data protection is achieved to the maximum here. When the failed disk is replaced with a new one, data is automatically copied from the surviving disk to the new disk, which is done automatically by the RAID controller. Suppose if one of the hard disk drive fails, you can access the data from the surviving hard disk drive. Again, if you are going to replace the failed hard disk drive with the new one, there need not be any manual intervention to copy the data from the mirrored copy to the new hard disk drive. The data will be automatically copied by the RAID controller. The RAID controller will ensure that both the hard disk drive will contain the same data, the mirrored data. Now, it also comes with its own disadvantage. The disadvantage is the amount of storage capacity is twice the amount of data that is stored. To store 1 GB of data, we may need 2 GB of storage space, right? We need twice the amount of storage capacity when compared to the data stored. That is a disadvantage, which makes this not that cost effective. This RAID 1 is not that cost effective because we need double the storage capacity when compared to the amount of data. Mirroring is not the same as doing the backup. Remember, we also have a term called as backup, which is also used to protect the data or store the data over a longer duration of time. Now in backup, what happens is it is done at a specific duration of time. Maybe at the end of every hour or the end of every day or the end of every 2 days and so on, we are going to perform the backup. Whereas mirroring is done every time a data is written to the storage drive. Every time a data is stored, at the same time a mirrored copy is generated. That is not the case in that is not the scenario in case of the backup. Backup happens at a particular frequency, maybe at the end of every hour or at the end of every day. So mirroring is not the same as doing the backup. Let us look at a simple animation to understand this RAID 1 implementation. A block of data will be sent by the host to be stored onto the storage device. The RAID controller mirrors this block 0. It mirrors this and stores 2 copies of the data. The same data will be stored in 2 hard disk drives. So this is mirroring. Similarly, the next block of data comes, the RAID controller will mirror it and store it in 2 different hard disk drives. So advantages, it offers highest availability. If one of the hard disk drive crashes, data can be accessible to the surviving hard disk drive. Disadvantages, it requires twice the amount of storage. The next type of RAID level we have is called as the nested RAID. It combines the performance benefits of RAID 0 with the redundancy benefits of RAID 1. As we had just discussed now, RAID 0 offers performance benefits, whereas RAID 1 offers redundancy benefit. Combining both these benefits, so they are implemented, we can implement something called as nested RAID. In this nested RAID, we have 2 types, RAID 01 and RAID 10. RAID 01 is called as mirrored stripe and RAID 10 is called as striped mirror. Let us see what this RAID 01 is first. In RAID 01, data is striped across the hard disk drives, then the entire stripe is mirrored. So first RAID 0 is implemented and then we implement RAID 1. Hence the name RAID 01. First the data is striped, which is your RAID 0, and then the entire stripe is mirrored, which is RAID 1. So you first implement RAID 0 and over that RAID 0 you implement RAID 1. So hence the name RAID 01. Data is striped across the hard disk drives first, then the entire stripe is mirrored. If one of the drive fails, the entire stripe is faulted. If one of the hard disk drive fails, the entire stripe of data is faulted. Rebuild operation requires data to be copied from each disk in the healthy stripe, causing an increasing load on the surviving disks. So rebuild operation, in case of one of the hard disk drive fails, it requires that the data to be copied from each disk in the healthy stripe, causing increased load on surviving disks. Right? So that is your RAID 01. You first implement striping and then mirroring. First implement RAID 0 and then implement RAID 1 over it. Second category of nested RAID level we have is something called as RAID 10. It's also called as striped mirror. As the name suggests, we first implement RAID 1 and over that we implement RAID 0. So data is first mirrored in case of RAID 10 and then both the copies are striped across multiple hard disk drives. So in RAID 1.0, we first implement RAID 1, which is mirroring, and then we implement RAID 0 over it, that is striping of the data. When a disk drive fails, data is still accessible from its mirror. Rebuild operation only requires data to be copied from the surviving disk into the replacement disk. So rebuild operation in case of RAID 1.0 is simpler when compared to RAID 0.1. In case of rebuild operation, it requires only the data to be copied from the surviving disk into the replacement disk. So that is RAID 0.1 and RAID 1.0. Let us look at the diagram here. So this is RAID 0.1, this is RAID 1.0. So the block of data or data will be sent from the host. So we can treat this as a RAID controller. So in RAID 0.1 implementation, data will be first striped, and this striped data will be mirrored. Okay, first a block of data A comes, it will be striped into A1, A2 and A3, and for each of these stripe or each of these strips of data, we are going to mirror it. Right, after striping the data will be mirrored. So first RAID 0 implementation, and then second step is RAID 1 implementation. That is RAID 0.1. Similarly, on the right hand side we have RAID 1.0 implementation, where RAID 1 is implemented first and then RAID 0. So RAID 1, in essence, we are first implementing mirroring for the data that is coming from the host. The RAID controller will first mirror the data, and the mirrored data will then be striped and stored. Right, a block of data A comes, it will be first mirrored, and for every mirror we are going to stripe the data A1, A2, A3, A1, A2, A3 and so on. So first mirroring the data and then striping, hence the name RAID 1.0. So this is nested RAID, combining the benefits of both RAID 0 and RAID 1. If you are implementing RAID 1 first and then RAID 0, you call it as RAID 1.0, or the reverse, if you are first implementing RAID 0 and then RAID 1 over it, you call it as RAID 0.1. Okay, now let us look at how this nested RAID 0.1 works. So a block of data will be sent from the host to be stored in the storage system. So what this RAID controller should do is it should first implement RAID 0 and then implement RAID 1. That is, it should first stripe the data and then mirror it. Let us see what happens. A block of data comes. A block of data, block 0, will be sent from the host. RAID controller first stripes this block of data into block 0 and block 1 and then mirrors it. So this striping part represents RAID 0 implementation, and then it will be mirrored, which is RAID 1 implementation. So first RAID 0 implementation and then RAID 1 implementation, hence the name RAID 0.1. Similarly, the next block of data comes, it will be first striped and then mirrored. Now let us assume if this hard disk drive fails. Let us see what happens if one of the hard disk drive fails. If this hard disk drive fails, what happens is the entire stripe needs to be discarded, and we need to rebuild the entire stripe of data. So since these two disks contain one stripe of data, the entire stripe will have to be discarded and rebuilt from the mirrored hard disk or mirrored copy of the data. That is, this entire hard disk drive or this entire stripe of data will be discarded, and this entire stripe will be rebuilt from the surviving disks. The entire stripe of data will be rebuilt. So that is how the rebuild operation takes place in case of nested RAID 0.1. Similarly, let us also look at how RAID 1.0 is implemented. In nested RAID 1.0 implementation, so a block of data will be first mirrored and then striped. So RAID 1 is implemented first, followed by RAID 0. Let us look at that in an animation. A block 0 of data comes. The RAID controller will first mirror the data. That is RAID 1 implementation, and then it is going to stripe this data. That is RAID 0 implementation. That is RAID 0 implementation. Similarly, next block of data comes, first mirroring and then striping. Now if one of the hard disk drive fails, let us assume if this hard disk drive fails, in that scenario what happens is, you can just observe here, the same blocks of data is available in this hard disk drive. This hard disk drive contains a mirrored copy of the data that was present here. So the data can be rebuilt from using the data that is present in this hard disk drive. So in case of RAID 1 implementation, data protection or data rebuilding of the data or lost data or recovering from a hard disk drive failure is much simpler. Data is recovered. Now let us see what is this parity. We are already discussed what is the parity. Let us look at it once again. Parity is basically a mathematical relationship between the different blocks of data that is stored in different hard disk drives. So using this mathematical relation, we can regenerate the data that has been lost. Let us assume we have a chunk of data. Okay, it is striped by the RAID controller and it computes a parity. In this case, parity is the sum of all these values. 4 plus 6 plus 1 plus 7 will yield a value 18. In this example, parity disk will contain the sum of all the other values. If one of the hard disk drive fails, let us say if this middle hard disk drive fails, we can regenerate this particular value by using the mathematical relationship, by using its parity value as it is shown here. So that is how we can regenerate the lost data in using the parity generation technique. This disk is called as a dedicated parity disk. It's meant for storing only the parity values. Let's look at the next RAID levels. We have RAID 3 and RAID 4. So in both these RAID levels, it stripes data for high performance and uses parity for improved fault tolerance. So it involves both striping as well as parity generation technique. Striping is done for achieving high performance, and for data protection or for fault tolerance, we are going to implement parity technique, or we are going to use the parity technique here. So in both this RAID 3 and RAID 4, one dedicated hard disk drive is used for storing the parity information. One drive is dedicated for storing the parity information. If one of the hard disk drive fails, in case of RAID 3 and RAID 4, data can be reconstructed using the data in the parity drive. As we had just seen in the previous slide, using that parity value, we can regenerate the data that has been lost in one of the hard disk drives. For RAID 3, data is read or written across the entire stripe, right? Data read-write is done across the entire stripe. That is, we need to parallelly read and write the data from multiple hard disk drives or from all the hard disk drives. So provide good bandwidth for large sequential data access such as video streaming. So it is best suitable for systems which require sequential data access, large sequential data access such as video streaming services. Whereas RAID 4, data read-write can be independently done on a single disk. You can independently access the individual disk drives. That is the difference between RAID 3 and RAID 4. In RAID 3, data has to be read, the entire stripe of data should be read at a time. Okay. Whereas in case of RAID 4, you can individually access the independent disks, or you can independently access each of the hard disk drives. That is the difference between RAID 3 and RAID 4. So both of these RAID 3 and RAID 4 levels, they need a dedicated hard disk drive to store the parity information. Let us look at this animation to better understand the implementation of RAID 3. A block of data will be sent up from the host to be stored into the storage system. The RAID controller will stripe this data and store it across the different hard disk drive. It first computes the parity, stores this stripe of data in the hard disk drive, and stores the parity value that is generated in the dedicated parity disk. Right? Parity is now computed and the parity value is stored here. The entire stripe of data will be stored in these hard disk drives. This is a dedicated disk that is meant for storing the parity value or the parity information. Now, the next two levels of RAID, we have RAID 5 and RAID level 6. RAID 5 is similar to RAID 4, except that the parity is distributed across all the disks instead of stored on a dedicated disk drive. As we had seen in case of both RAID 3 and RAID 4, there was a need for having a dedicated hard disk drive for storing the parity information. That is not required in case of RAID 5. The parity is distributed across all the hard disk drives. This overcomes the write bottleneck on the parity disk. If the parity information is distributed across all the hard disk drive, it overcomes the write bottleneck on the parity disk. Then we have RAID 6. RAID 6 is similar to RAID 5, except that it includes a second parity element to allow survival in the event of two disk failures. So rather than depending on just one parity information, it also has a second parity element. It computes two different types of parity or stores two different types of parities in the event of two disk failures. This can also handle an event where more than one or two hard disk drive fails at a time. Even in such a scenario, you can recover the lost data. The probability for this to happen increases as the number of drives in the array increases. That is event where two hard disk drive fails. It calculates both horizontal parity similar to RAID 5 as well as the diagonal parity. So RAID 6 has more write penalty than in RAID 5. We have a term called as write penalty. Now this write penalty specifies how many read and write operations should be done to store or to write one data. So if you are taking a particular RAID level, so that RAID level performs how many read and write operations to store one new data. That is called as write penalty. Rebuild operation may take longer than on RAID 5. Okay, rebuild operation in RAID 6 may take longer than the RAID 5 implementation. So this is your RAID 5 implementation. So these are the data from the host. The RAID controller stripes the data, computes the parity, and you can observe there is no dedicated parity disk. The parity values are distributed across all the hard disk drives. If you look at this diagonal, data is stored, the parity value is distributed across all the hard disk drive. That is your RAID 5 implementation. Similarly, you have RAID 6 implementation where we have dual distributed parity. In case of RAID 5, it was only a distributed parity, a single parity which was distributed. Whereas here in case of RAID 6, the RAID controller computes two values for parities and stores it again in a distributed fashion. So blocks of data comes, the RAID controller will stripe the data, compute the parity information. We are talking about two different parity values in case of RAID 6 and stores it in a distributed manner. Right, so you can see this AP and AQ are two different parity values that is computed by the RAID controller and stored in different hard disk drive. That is your RAID 6 implementation. Again an animation for RAID 5, a block of data will be sent from the host that will be received by the RAID controller. It stripes the data, computes the parity, okay, and stores this data across all the existing hard disk drive. Again, suppose the block 0 of data needs to be updated. Okay, suppose this block 0 of data needs to be updated. New value will be sent from the host. So before storing this value, it fetches the old parity value. It fetches the old actual data value, then computes the parity, writes the new data and stores the new parity values. You can observe there, we just replay it once again. A block, suppose this block 0 of data needs to be updated. Okay, so the RAID controller first fetches the parity value, it fetches the old data. So two read operations are performed here. It computes the parity. After computing the parity, it writes the updated data, that is block 0, and also stores the updated parity value. So two write operation. After computing the parity, so storing the parity, that is first write operation and storing block 0. So this is the write penalty for RAID 5. Hence we can say write penalty for RAID 5 is 4 because it involves two read operations and two write operations. 2 plus 2 equals to 4. The write penalty value therefore for RAID 5 is 4. Let us observe one more example. A block of data 4, suppose it needs to be updated. In that case, read the old block of data, read the parity value, compute the new parity. After the new parity is computed, store the new parity value, store the updated data block. So again 4 operations, 2 reads and 2 writes. Hence we can say write penalty value for RAID 5 is 4. 2 reads and 2 writes. So this chart briefly compares all the RAID levels. So we have the RAID level, number of minimum disks that are required, storage efficiency percentage, the cost, read performance and write performance. For RAID 0, the minimum number of disks that is required to implement RAID 0 is 2. Storage efficiency is 100%. Cost of implementation is low. So when we are talking about the read performance, it's very good for both random and sequential reads. Write performance is also very good. In the case of RAID 1, again the minimum number of disks that is required to implement RAID 1 is 2. Storage efficiency is 50%. As we discussed earlier, we need twice the amount of storage when compared to the data. That is why storage performance is half. It's 50% only. Cost of implementation, therefore, it is very high. Read performance is good, much better than a single disk. Write performance is good, although it is slower than a single disk, as every write must be committed to 2 disks. So if you are going to store one data, that has to be stored or returned to 2 hard disk drive. Hence it is a bit slower. Then we have RAID 3. It requires minimum of 3 hard disk drives to be implemented, because one dedicated hard disk drive is required. Storage efficiency is computed using the formula n minus 1 into 100 divided by n, where n is the number of disks. If you have the number of disks, you can compute the storage efficiency using the formula n minus 1 into 100 by n. Cost is moderate. Read performance is good for random reads and very good for sequential reads. When it comes to write performance, it's poor to fair for small random writes, but good for large sequential writes. Hence it can be used for services such as video streaming, since data has to be read one stripe at a time or in parallel. Then we have RAID 5. Again, for RAID 5, the minimum number of disks required to implement is 3. Storage efficiency is computed using the formula n minus 1 into 100 by n, where n is the number of disks. Again, the cost is moderate. Read performance is very good for random reads, and it's good for sequential reads. Write performance is fair for random write, slower due to parity overhead, fair to good for sequential writes. That is the write performance for RAID 5. RAID 6, it requires a minimum of 4 disks to implement. As we had discussed earlier, RAID 6 stores 2 parity values. It computes dual distributed parity. Hence the minimum number of disks that is required is 4. Storage efficiency is computed using the formula n minus 2 into 100 divided by n, where n is the number of disks. In the earlier example, the RAID 5 and RAID 3, the formula was n minus 1. Here it is n minus 2, because we are storing 2 different parity values. N minus 2 into 100 divided by n, where n is the number of disks, gives us the storage efficiency. Cost is moderate but more than RAID 5. Cost of implementation here is more than RAID 5, but still it is moderate. Read performance is very good for random reads, and it is good for sequential reads as well. Write performance is good for small random writes, but it has a write penalty which also needs to be considered. Now, if we are talking about nested RAID, that is RAID 10 and RAID 01 implementation, the minimum number of disks that needs to be installed, the minimum number of disks that needs to be considered is 4. We need to have minimum of 4 disks to implement this nested RAID, either RAID 10 or RAID 01. Storage efficiency is 50%. Since both these use mirroring, the storage efficiency is decreased to 50%. Cost of implementation is very high. Read performance is very good, write performance is good. Okay, that is a brief comparison of all the RAID levels that we have just discussed. Now let us see what is the RAID impacts on performance. Suppose a new block of data. Okay, let us say if a block data in disk 4 needs to be stored, so RAID controller will have to perform a bunch of read and write operations. The total number of read and write operations that needs to be done is called as a write penalty. Higher the write penalty, higher is the impact of RAID implementation on the performance of the system. Okay, let us say data present on this disk 4 or E4 needs to be updated. In that case, RAID controller should first read the old data that is present in disk 4. It should read the old parity value. Remember, we have just finished 2 read operations. Then it needs to perform an XOR operation to compute the new parity value. Once the new parity value is computed, then the RAID controller should store the new data in the hard disk drive, and also store the new computed parity value into the parity disk in place of the old parity value. And hence again 2 write operations needs to be performed. So you can say for RAID 5 the write penalty is 4. So your RAID controller basically performs an XOR operation to compute the parity values. So if parity is valid, then new data equals to old data, or the new parity value equals to the old parity values minus the old data plus the value for the new data. So 2 reads and 2 disk writes needs to be performed. Hence 2 plus 2, the write penalty value is 5. let us look at the difference between parity and mirroring. So reading, calculating and writing parity segment introduces penalty to every write operation. So whenever we are calculating parity, so reading, calculating and writing this new parity value, it introduces penalty to every write operation. Parity read penalty manifests due to slower cache flushes. Increased load in writes can cause contention and can cause slower read response times. So it may slow or it may increase the response times for read operations as well. Okay. Now we have something called as hot spares. Till now we were discussing why RAID is required. We found that RAID was required if one of the hard disk drive fails. Now the next question is, what happens if the hard disk drive fails? How we are going to replace it? So that is where these hot spares come into the picture. A hot spare refers to a spare hard disk drive in a RAID array that temporarily replaces a failed hard disk drive of a RAID set. Suppose one of a hard disk drive in a RAID set fails. So we can use a spare hard disk drive called a hot spare. So that can temporarily replace a failed hard disk drive in a RAID set. A hot spare takes the identity of a failed hard disk drive in an array. It's a spare hard disk drive. One of the following methods of data recovery is performed depending upon the RAID implementation. If parity RAID is used, then the data is rebuilt onto the hot spare from the parity and the data on the surviving hard disk drives in the RAID set. So if parity RAID is implemented, then data is rebuilt onto this newly introduced hot spare from the parity and the data on the surviving hard disk in the RAID set. If mirroring is used, then the data from the surviving mirror is used to copy the data. So in both the cases, the hot spare will contain the data that was earlier present in the failed hard disk drive. We have a simple animation here. Suppose out of these three disks in the RAID set, if one of the disk fails, if one of the hard disk drive crashes, so we are going to introduce a hot spare which will contain the data that was earlier present in this. It may either fetch it from the mirrored copy or from the parity values. When the hard disk drive is replaced with a new hard disk drive, when a failed hard disk drive is replaced with a new hard disk drive, one of the following takes place. The hot spare replaces the new hard disk drive permanently. This means that it is no longer a hot spare and a new hot spare must be configured on that particular array. The hot spare, in some scenario, it may replace the hard disk drive permanently. In such a scenario, the RAID controller will have to configure a new hot spare onto the storage array. Second scenario is when a new hard disk drive is added to a system, data from the hot spare is copied to it. The hot spare returns to its idle state, ready to replace the next failed drive. So two scenarios are possible. In one scenario, the hard disk drive permanently replaces, the hot spare permanently replaces the hard disk drive. So a new hot spare should be configured. Second scenario, whatever data that was present in the hot spare will be copied back to the newly introduced hard disk drive, and the hot spare will return back to its idle state, ready to replace the next failed drive. Okay, now that we have understood the different RAID implementations, the RAID levels, let us recall the write penalty value for the different RAID levels. So for RAID 0, the write penalty is 1. For RAID 1, the write penalty is 2. For RAID 3, the write penalty is 4. For RAID 5, the write penalty value is 4. And for RAID 6, the write penalty value is 6. Remember, write penalty represents how many read-write operations that needs to be performed for writing one data for a given RAID level. Okay, so for RAID 6, the write penalty value is 6. That indicates 6 read-write operations should be performed whenever we try to write a new data. Remember these write penalty values. We need to remember for which RAID level what is the write penalty value, as we will be using these write penalty values to compute the disk load. We will be looking into some of the problems where we will be using this write penalty values. Let us look at one problem that is given, that was asked in one of the examinations. The question is like this: consider an application that generates 7200 IOPS with 60% of them being reads. Calculate the disk load in RAID 1, RAID 5 and RAID 6. If a hard disk drive with a specification of maximum 180 IOPS for the application needs to be used, calculate the number of disks required to meet the workload for RAID 5, RAID 1 and RAID 6 implementation. So what are they specifying is, what is the question asking us to do is, they have given us that application generates 7200 IOPS. Now out of this 7200 IOPS, it's mentioned that 60% of the IOPS is reads, and that means this remaining 40% is write operations. We need to compute the disk load in RAID 1, RAID 5 and RAID 6. So they've also asked one more thing: if a hard disk drive with a specification of 180 IOPS for the application needs to be used, calculate the number of disks to meet the workload for RAID 1, RAID 5 and RAID 6. So two things we are supposed to compute for these three RAID levels. We need to compute the disk load as well as the number of hard disk drives that are required. Disk load is calculated using the formula total IOPS into percentage of reads plus total IOPS into percentage of writes into the write penalty value for a given RAID level. Okay, the total number of IOPS into the percentage of reads plus total number of IOPS into the percentage of writes into the write penalty for a given RAID level. So let us first compute the disk load for RAID 1. As we had seen earlier, the write penalty value for RAID 1 is 2. So the disk load for RAID 1 is computed as 7200, which is the IOPS that is given for an application. The application generates 7200 IOPS into 0.6, which is 60% of the IOPS. Okay, 60% we are going to represent it as 0.6. So 7200 into 0.6 is the disk load for the read, plus the write penalty value is 2 for RAID 1. 2 into 40% of the IOPS is write operations. So 2 into 0.4 into 7200. So this is the disk load for read operation and this is the disk load for the write operation. Sum of both these disk load will give us the total disk load, which is 10,080 IOPS. For RAID 1, the disk load, the number of disks that is required is given as the IOPS for RAID 1 divided by 180. So that is 56 hard disk drives are required. For RAID 5, so it generates 15840 IOPS. So 15,840 divided by 180, it requires 88 HDDs. Similarly for RAID 6 implementation, it is 21,600 divided by 180, which gives us 120 hard disk drives. So 120 hard disk drives are required to implement RAID 6 for an application that generates 7200 IOPS, where a hard disk drive of 180 IOPS each is used. Okay, that was first problem. Let us also look at one more problem. The question goes like this: an application has 1000 heavy users at a peak of 2 IOPS each and 2000 typical users at a peak of 1 IOPS each, with a read-write ratio of 2:1. Here instead of percentage they have given us in terms of ratio. So we have 1000 heavy users at a peak of 2 IOPS each and 2000 typical users at a peak of 1 IOPS each with a read-write ratio of 2:1. It is estimated that the application also experiences an overhead of 20% for other workloads. Calculate the IOPS required for RAID 1, RAID 3, RAID 5 and RAID 6. Also compute the number of drives required to support the application in different RAID environments if 10K RPM drives with a rating of 130 IOPS per drive were used. So similar to our previous problem, so they have given us the IOPS. What we are supposed to compute is the disk load for the different RAID levels as well as the number of hard disk drive that is required. Now they have mentioned that they have 1000 heavy users, that our application has 1000 heavy users at the peak of 2 IOPS each. So 2 into 1000, that gives us 2000 IOPS for heavy users, and 2000 typical users at a peak of 1 IOPS each. So 2000 into 1, that is 2000 IOPS. Assuming maximum concurrency of 90%, that is 2000 plus 2000 into 0.9, that gives us 3600 host based IOPS for 3000 users during the peak activity period. So assuming a maximum concurrency of 90%, so 90% of 4000 is 3600 IOPS for 3000 users during the peak activity period. So since they have given us as the read-write ratio is 2:1, the disk load for RAID 1 is computed as 3600 into 2 by 3 plus the write penalty for RAID 1, which is 2, into 1 by 3, which is the number of writes into 3600. That gives us 4800 IOPS. So 2/3 of the operations will be read operations and 1/3 operations will be the write operations. Similarly for RAID 3, 3600 into 2 by 3, if you observe, the read operations will be same for all the RAID levels. The write operations will also be the same, only the write penalty value changes. Rest of the values will be the same. For RAID 3, the disk load is computed as 3600 into 2 by 3 plus the write penalty, which is 4 into 1 by 3 into 3600, which equals to 7200 IOPS. Similarly for RAID 5, it is 3600 into 2 by 3, the read disk load, the read IOPS plus write penalty is 4 into 1300 into 3600, which is again 7200 IOPS. So for RAID 6, it is 3600 into 2 by 3 plus write penalty value for RAID 6 is 6. So 6 into 1 by 3 into 3600, which equals 9600 IOPS. Now we need to compute the number of disk drive that is required to implement these RAID levels. If the disk drive per drive, if 130 IOPS is the rating for every hard disk drive that is used by these applications. So number of drives required to support the application in different RAID environments. If 10K RPM drives, the rating of 130 IOPS per drive is used is, for RAID 1, the disk load was 4800 divided by 130. That gives us 37 drives or hard disk drives. For RAID 3, it is 7200 by 130, which is 55 drives. For RAID 5, again it is 7200 by 130, which is 55 drives. For RAID 6, it is 9600 divided by 130, which equals to 74 drives. So we have computed the disk load for RAID 1, RAID 3, RAID 5 and RAID 6. Also the number of disk drives that is required. This is the disk load that we have computed earlier. Using this disk load, we are going to compute the number of hard disk drive that is required. So you may expect such questions in the examinations. With this, we can conclude this chapter. Before concluding, let us briefly summarize the things that we have discussed so far. So we have understood the different RAID levels. We discussed RAID 0, RAID 1, nested RAID, RAID 3, RAID 4, RAID 5 and RAID 6. So we understood that RAID 1 is used for improved performance but doesn't offer any fault tolerance. RAID 1 uses mirroring. Nested RAID, it combines the benefit of both RAID 0 and RAID 1. RAID 3 and RAID 4, both of these use dedicated parity. The difference between RAID 3 and RAID 4 is RAID 3 uses, it reads entire type of data at a time, parallel disk access. Whereas RAID 4, you can access individual disks independently at a time. So RAID 5 doesn't use any dedicated parity, rather it uses distributed parity. RAID 6 is similar to RAID 5, but it uses dual distributed parity. So after this, we saw what do you mean by write penalty. We understood the different write penalty values for different RAID levels. We understood what do we mean by RAID levels, the hot spares, what is the use of hot spare and how to use the hot spare. And at the end, we solved a bunch of problems. With this, we can conclude this chapter 3 of your syllabus. Thank you.